Hey guys, BassGeek here, and I'm going to tell you about a bite during the fall you do not need to forget about. Everybody tells you that the fall is all about the shad. The shad migrate, the bass migrate to the backs of the coves, backs of the pockets. The bass are corralling up the shad in the pockets. They're chasing shad, busting shad, feeding up for the winter. But there's one thing that goes on that you better pay close attention to. And it can happen as early as August up north and as late as November deep down south. In my area, it happens around September and October. And that is when your big crawdads, your big crayfish, molt. So as the days get shorter, and that's another video we need to do at some point in time, it's not always about the water temps. As days get shorter, length of day plays a huge role in bass migration also. So don't neglect those days getting shorter, or in the spring, those days getting longer. But to get back on subject, so in my area, most of the time, around the full moon or the new moon in September, or the same time in October, the big crawfish. Now the big crawfish only molt, and what molting is they come out, they shed that hard exoskeleton, so they are softer. They're easier to digest for the bass. So during this time of year, especially again in my area, they tend to drop the lake level. Now they may not drop it in your area, you may live on natural lakes or whatever, but this will still apply, just not the part where they're dropping the lake levels. So as they're dropping the lake levels in the reservoirs I live on, those big crayfish and even the little ones are slowly backing off with them. So a lot of times when they come out and molt around that new or full moon in September, you can get on a jig bite that is phenomenal. Now, one thing that I should probably say is that it's not necessarily just a jig bite. A good craw color, crankbait, a square bill if you're in your area can work just as well. But I'm telling you, those crayfish tend to move just a little bit slower, so dragging that jig around tends to really get those big bites. They don't call a jig a big bass bait for nothing. It generally is going to get those big bites. The smaller crayfish or those crawdads are going to molt multiple times a year, as opposed to those larger crayfish where they're going to molt 2 times a year. They're going to molt in the early spring and they're going to molt in the fall. And this is a perfect time to catch a stud bass while everybody else is chasing those shad around. The very first thing, let's talk about the jig itself. Let's talk about the style that I like to go to. Now, if you're fishing around nothing but rock, you've really got nothing but rock, a good football head is going to be hard to beat. Go ahead, get that football head out there, drag it around, you're going to be just fine. But if they're dropping that lake, you kind of want to stay, 5, 10, 15 feet down. And if you're fishing the kind of the style of lakes that I fish, there's also a lot of wood. There's only one head for that sort of stuff. Rock and wood, you're going to go with that archy head. Some people call it a flipping jig. It's also a great skipping style head. So if you're around docks, this is, if you guys have seen my Jigs 101 video, this is my 4x4. This is the jig that I'm going to throw 90% of the time. Now, as far as jigs, I know you guys are going to ask me, and I use so many different kinds. The Arky head kind of is the Arky head, but I know you guys are going to ask for companies. Opticast makes some tungsten casting jigs. Go check out their website. There's a discount code in the bottom that'll get you a discount. I use LT Jigs, is a good friend of mine. He makes some. I've had Rocky Top Jigs make me some jigs. He does a great job. Killer Bass Baits. Go to his website. He makes some really great casting, flipping, skipping, pitching, whatever you want to call them, jigs, and some colors that I really like. Let's see, who else? Football jigs, you know, Killer Bass Baits makes some good football jigs. Opticast makes some good football jigs. I've got a bunch of those. You know, as far as the Arky head goes, those are the companies that I'd recommend you go out to. Those are generally the companies that I kind of round robin and use. So as far as companies, you know, just keep an eye out for that particular head style. And, you know, there's thousands of them out there that make them. So now the colors of the jig, generally, I'm going to keep that real simple, you know, as always. If you're in stained water, really, really muddy to stained water, you know, that black and blue with a black and blue trailer, that's going to be what you're going to need to throw. Stained to clear, you begin to have a little, you know, some options. My go-tos are going to be the black, brown, amber, and it's going to be the brown and the orange with a little bit of orange to it. On top of that, I may throw, because those bigger crawls, they can get this green, and when they molt, they'll have a little bit of that darker orange or red in them. So I may throw a watermelon red flake or some watermelon and put me a trailer on there of red flake that's got a watermelon red flake in it. So a good green with some red flake in there. Now, as far as size goes, when it comes to these jigs, generally I'm bouncing back and forth between a 3/8 ounce and my go-to is the 1/2 ounce. If I feel like they're a little finicky, I'll move that 3/8 ounce. If I've got a little bit of wind, you know, it's that 3/8 ounce is going to be a slower fall. If I've got a little bit of wind, I'm going to jump up and I'm going to throw my 1/2 ounce. My 1/2 ounce, I believe, has just got that good rate of fall, good feel at a, you know, a multitude of different depth levels also. The other good thing is with that Arky style head, I can really skip that 1/2 ounce if I've got a good beaver on there, some sort of good, you know, flat beaver on there, that I can make that bait wider and skip it even easier. So now let's talk about jig trailers. Now generally I'm going to match it green to a green, so if I'm throwing a green jig, I'm going to throw a watermelon trailer. Two of my favorite trailers are going to be this trailer, which is the Grunt by Bass Munitions. This is in green pumpkin black flake, and you can see it's once you pull all these appendages apart, it's going to have a little more action. Now in the fall, you know, everything's moving a little quicker except your crayfish. Your crawdads, when they molt, you know, they're not in a really good mood. So a lot of times what I go with is this is the Moab by Bass Munitions, and you know, it's really great about, you know, it's a big trailer. You can cut it down. Generally I'll cut it down, you know, to about that, but that really mimics those crayfish, those crawdads, really well. It's got a nice subtle flutter action. You know, it's not got a lot of kick as it's falling down. Now if I'm around a lot of wood, or if I'm around, again, boat docks that may have a lot of cover around them, generally that's what I'm going to go to. Now I will say this I need to back up here. You know, if you're fishing a lot of grass, you're going to want to go to a flipping jig. And I'll tell you, it's really hard to beat the Trashmaster jig from Karl's Bait and Tackle. That jig is completely weedless. So if you're flipping around a lot of grass or fishing around a lot of grass, you're going to want that narrower head that the Trashmaster is going to give you. So let's talk about rod, reel, and line. Generally, because I'm throwing this not in the heaviest of cover, you know, if I'm flipping this jig, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to pick me up a flipping stick, you know, a 7/6 medium action, and I'm gonna flip that in there. So I'll have those, you know, a lot of times both of those on the deck. But a lot of times I'm really targeting that rock that's, you know, kind of those flat rocks where they can get out and kind of, you know, exfoliate that exoskeleton. That's what they're going to look for. They're going to look for that sort of stuff to kind of rub up against and peel that hard shell off. And when I'm doing that, again, I'm going right back to that Arky style head. And so for me, you know, I'm throwing around kind of not open water, but, you know, some rock and, you know, some wood. And generally I'm going to throw 15-pound test. Now you can go up to 20 if you want. Like I said, I fish a little clear water, so 15-pound test I feel pretty safe, even throwing it in some fairly heavy cover. You know, if I get a hold of a 15-pounder, and I'll just be honest with you, on the lakes I fish, that chance is probably slim to none. Getting hold of a 10-pounder is probably slim to none a lot of times, in at least we'll say some of the lakes. But all that being said, you know, 15-pound test, I feel like I can fight that fish out of cover, sparse cover, and get him to the boat no problem whatsoever. Generally, I'm going to go with a medium heavy, a 7-foot to a 7.3 with a fast action tip. You know, I like that. I like that tip, you know, to really tell me what I'm dragging that jig across. That's another thing, the retrieve, guys. I'm not going to really hop this a lot. I'm going to drag that jig in those areas that I think it's going to get bit. And again, I'm looking for those areas that have a lot of rock. I'm specifically targeting kind of that flat rock. I don't want to say river rock, but you kind of know if you've went out and turned rocks over to try and find crawfish, you kind of know the rock I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, then get your ends out right now and go looking for these rocks and start flipping them over to find some daggum, you know, crawfish. Where have you been? And then when it comes to the reel, guys, you know I like my Lew's, my LFS. Generally, I'm going to have a high speed, and this is an area where I'm okay with going as high as the 8s, because again, you're not in heavy cover, so you know you want to keep up with that fish if he gets a hold of that jig, and you want to get him back to the boat. 7 to 8 to 9, I'm good with that as long as you're not in super heavy cover. All right, guys, get out there, because it should be going on right now if you're in kind of my area, my zone, my hemisphere. I forget the name. I know it's sad. But anyway, if you're in my area and the fall is just really beginning to start, guys, make sure you get out there this September, this October. Don't ignore the jig bite, because I'm telling you, you could load the boat on some untapped fish while everybody else is chasing those shad, including me, because 90% of the time I'm chasing shad too. But this bite can be incredible. All right, guys, questions and comments, make sure you leave them in the comment section down below. You know I love to talk about fishing with you, and this is something you will see me doing here over the course of the next couple of months. I love this. This is why I'm trying to get it out to you. I meant to get this out to you earlier, because this is one of my favorite times of year to throw a daggone jig. And something that I left out, a wobble head. You can really cover water running that wobble head around. So don't leave that wobble head out. We'll talk about that maybe next year. Anyway, like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell so you get the notifications when these videos come out. Hey, by the way, if you don't have a BassGeek t-shirt or hoodie, or you don't have one for your infant or your toddler or your wife, go out to Shop BassGeek. That's all you have to do. Search it on Google. Shop BassGeek. It'll be the very first option. And pick yourself up a shirt. Let everybody know that you support the channel, and let everybody know that you are a daggum bass geek. All right. I'm done talking. I want to go catch some fish. You guys rock.